There are people that have genuine concerns about the vaccine. But the framing of these people who have not taken the vaccine is that they're evil, that they don't care about anybody, that they're selfish, that they are mass spreaders, that they are putting everybody's lives in danger. And then when you see the mass pushes that we are taking in order to get people vaccinated, this is going to shock you. Okay, so now we have offered that your traffic tickets can be released if you go and get your COVID-19 vaccination. We've offered 12 packs of Budweiser to go and get your COVID vaccinations. We have offered free Mets tickets to go and get your vaccinations, free Yankees tickets to go and get your vaccination. We have offered money to go and get your vaccination. Now, I want you to think about this in regards to African Americans, because the number one people group that are not being vaccinated in New York are African Americans. And so now in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio said, unless you have a VAC card, you cannot gain entrances into these particular businesses. Well, if I go get my vaccination, then I need my ID to get my vaccination. So if voting rights were being inhibited, were being restricted by showing an ID to go and vote, then you turn around 1 year later and say, if I don't show my VAC card, I can't gain interest into these particular businesses. And I know that the number one group in your city that is not receiving the vaccinations were African Americans, then it seems as though African Americans are going to be discriminated from going into restaurants and to bars and into gyms. When I can control you and have power over what you do, what you think, what you say, how you interact, then I have the ultimate power over you. All right, everybody, welcome to Studio B. I am your host, Pastor MDH. Thank you for joining us here on the set again today. Remember, wherever you are watching us from, like, follow, subscribe, do what you do so that you don't miss anything going on the set of Studio B. Man, here we are. We have entered the month of September into the 9th month of 2021. And in 8 months, it has been a whirlwind. Now, the pundits and all of those who were screaming at the top of their lungs about this is going to be a new era, this is going to be a new chapter in American life, things are going to get back to some sense of normalcy in 2021, has been anything but. In the 8 months that have now come and gone, there has been headlines upon headlines upon headlines upon headlines. COVID-19 is still doing what it has done. We've got Afghanistan, we've got the Haiti earthquakes, we got the presidential assassination, we got voting ID, we got all of this stuff that is still on the landscape of America. And it seems as though things are going exactly in the same frame as it was before. So I've been having a lot of, off-air conversations with some good friends of mine, those who don't necessarily share my political affiliation, my worldview, and offer different waypoints on different topics, which I quite enjoy, actually. And we've been talking about a lot of things from A to Z, name anything in the middle of those, and we've absolutely talked about them. But one of the things that I told him yesterday is that a liberated mind is free from the tyranny of someone else's thoughts. A liberated mind is free from the tyranny of someone else's thoughts. It takes courage to think outside of the box or to challenge the normative thinking, to go against the status quo. It takes courage to do that. Because whether you know it or not, everything in our life is trying to get us to conform to somebody's worldview or to somebody's opinion. We are all in a conforming stage, and that's no matter what you're watching on TV, the commercials that we look at, the internet, social media. Everything is getting us to try to conform to a particular viewpoint. And it takes it takes courage to really to begin to observe those things at a really deep level and begin to start to frame your own thoughts. But by framing your own thoughts, you put yourself outside of the normative thinking. And that can be very challenging. A liberated mind is free from the tyranny of someone else's thoughts. I've often said, and I continue to say here on the set of Studio B, that you should challenge everything, that you should think beyond the thought, that you should, whatever is confronted to you, you should take the time, the energy, and the effort to evaluate, to study, to understand those things at a deeper level so that you can form an informative decision. And whether that puts you at odds with people around you, at least you know why you believe what you believe. At least you know why. That may put you out of the circles of popular opinion, but at least you know why you have the thoughts that you have, right? And it's not just getting on the bandwagon with everybody else, but really understanding the issues as best as you possibly can. So as I look at what's going on here in America and the world, I am always reminded of something that my mentor told me years and years ago. He said, if you see 99 people going one way and you see one person going the other way, find out what in the world that one person knows. If you see 99 people going one way and one person going the other way, find out what that one person knows. Because he knows something that the other 99 don't. But it takes courage to be that one. As you're looking at the news, as you're looking at social media, as you're looking at posts and tweets and all of these things that are bombarding our lives, all of those are meant to conform you to a way of thinking. All of them are. But when you challenge conventional thoughts and conventional wisdom and think beyond what is being told to you, you really begin to get a perspective that will offer you the greatest freedom that you'll ever enjoy. And that's the freedom of your mind. That's the freedom of your mind. And as we look in 2021, this year that has been filled with turmoil and trouble, we have to be able to think beyond the thought. I said last week on our podcast, and we talked about a lot of stuff, which is what we do here on Studio B. But one of the things that has been greatly on my heart here for the last few weeks is this thing with COVID-19. I was just talking off air to some people here on the set, and I told them that there are people that have genuine concerns about the vaccine. But the framing of these people who have not taken the vaccine is that they're evil, that they don't care about anybody, that they're selfish, that they are mass spreaders, that they are putting everybody's lives in danger because they are conspiracy theorists, and that they don't believe in science, they don't believe in medical this, that, and the other. And the people that I know that are struggling to get the vaccine, that is not the testimony of these said people. There are some people that have genuine concerns about this vaccine. They have genuine concerns about this vaccine. They have genuine concerns about it. And rightfully so. They're talking about something that you're getting ready to inject into your body. And so people want to know what it is. And if you look at what has happened over the last 3-6 months of COVID-19, especially here in the United States of America, and this absolute mad push to get everyone vaccinated, it can raise a couple of eyebrows. As we stand right now, as this podcast is being aired right now, 71% of all Americans of the age of vaccine, of being able to get the vaccine, have been vaccinated. So 71% of all Americans who can receive the vaccine have been vaccinated. 71%. Depending on what poll you look at, you're looking at about 355 million people here in the United States of America, and 71% of those people have gotten the vaccination. And so that has been a mad push, and people have responded. People have looked at the data and made the best decision that was for them and their family. But 71% of all Americans of the age to receive the vaccine have received the vaccine. We were told in the early stages of 2021 that the vaccine was the cure-all. That if we got the vaccine, no matter if it was Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson, that the vaccine was going to prohibit you from catching COVID-19. That was said early on in the year by Dr. Fauci, by the CDC, and all of the governing powers thereof, that if you get the vaccine, you are not going to contract COVID-19. That was told to all of us on any news source that you would turn on. The end all to COVID-19 was that everybody should get the vaccine. And if everybody got the vaccine, then that would bring the numbers of COVID-19 down dramatically. We were also told that if you got the vaccine, that you didn't have to wear these masks, that these masks would be obsolete. These masks would be a thing of the past because there would be no need to have the mask on if I've been vaccinated for the COVID-19 virus. Then as the months begin to progress, as we get into the month of May and as we got into the month of June, and now this Delta variant just popped up on the scene, and now the lingo changed. Now the lingo is, yes, you need to get the vaccine, but the vaccine is not going to prohibit you from contracting COVID-19. And even so much so as it will not prohibit you from COVID-19, there is still a chance that you can get gravely ill even if you have the vaccination. And so when you're looking at the vaccination that has been pushed by the CDC, by the White House, by Dr. Fauci, the problem that people have with the information of the COVID-19 virus and the vaccination is that the information has been sporadic. It has not been consistent. It has not been consistent at all. And then when you see the mass pushes that we are taking in order to get people vaccinated, this is going to shock you. Okay, so now we have offered that your traffic tickets can be released if you go and get your COVID-19 vaccination. We've offered 12 packs of Budweiser to go and get your COVID vaccinations. We have offered free Mets tickets to go and get your vaccinations, free Yankees tickets to go and get your vaccination. We have offered money to go and get your vaccination, $150, $150 to go and get your vaccination. We're putting all of these incentives up to go and get your COVID-19 vaccination when we have absolutely never done that in American history. And so it raises the question with a lot of people of why the big push to get a vaccination for a virus that still has a 99.7% survival rate. And so I see people and talk to people who have genuine concerns about the vaccination. Now, I'll just tell you this as a personal point of view, and I don't mean to overstate this, which in my mind, I don't think I am, but I pray that I'm not. I struggled getting the vaccine. In February, I got the vaccine. I got the Johnson & Johnson. And I think this was one of the times that I really put a lot of deep prayer, consideration, thought, research before I got it. I was not going to get it. The reason that I got it was because of my travels, my world travels. And that was initially the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge. But my hesitation of getting it was because of all of the misinformation that was surrounding the vaccination itself. And I also understood that as a father and as a husband, whatever I did, my family was going to follow. And so I took that responsibility very, very seriously and did absolute due diligence on my side before I got the shot in the arm. I struggled with it. I really struggled with it, even to the point that when I got the vaccination on that day that I almost turned around and walked out before I got the vaccination. But I got it. I got the Johnson & Johnson back in February of this year. As I talk to people who have still not gotten the vaccination, I'm hearing what is not a willy-nilly, not a I don't care about people, I don't care about life, I don't, conspiracy theories which are abounding. That's not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing from people who are not getting the vaccination is simply, I still have some deep concerns about the vaccination. And those things are logical. Okay, so now we're in a place right now to where we are going back to these lockdowns are happening again. We're going back to the whole social distancing and all of the things that are plaguing the land. And even in New York, Mayor de Blasio, and to my people in New York, this is no slide against you, but I don't understand why anybody likes New York the way that it does, but that's a whole nother story. But Mayor de Blasio has recently enacted some very stringent COVID-19 protocols, in so much as that you would have to show your vaccination passport or your VAC card before you can enter certain businesses. So if you don't show your vaccination card, you can't enter into restaurants, into gyms, into like 3 or 4 other industries in the city of New York. And this is by mandate of the city mayor, Bill de Blasio, by saying that if you don't show your vaccination card, you cannot enter these premises here in the United States of America. I want you to think about the slippery slope that puts us on. If you've been around this podcast for any length of time, you know that I am a lover of freedom. I am a lover of freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, these things that we hold dear to ourselves that allow me to get on a platform like this and express disagreements to local government and to federal government without the fear of reprisal. Okay, I get to do that because we have freedoms here that men and women have spilt their blood over in order for us to hold sacred. So the reason why I can get on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and express my opinions that may be different from those who are in power without the fear of those in power coming to arrest me because I am expressing something that is contrary to what they're saying is because in America, we have freedom. In America, we have freedom. We have choices. We don't have mandates. We don't have things that come down from on high that are pushed down to the citizens of America. Remember that America is a democracy. Our government is for and by the people. We don't work for our government. Our government works for us. And when we start to go down this road, we start to put ourselves on a very slippery slope that once you start sliding, it's hard to stop. So in New York, he says that unless you show your VAC card, you cannot gain entrance into a restaurant and gym and other industries in New York. Now, mind you, there was a big fallout last summer about voter ID. And how voter ID, when being able to show your ID, was considered to be a racist practice because there are certain people groups that do not have access to get IDs, mainly African Americans. Y'all know what I'm talking about. there was a big hoopla about being able to show and prove that you are the one casting the vote in whatever particular election that you may be voting in. Being able to show your ID was considered to be a racist practice because there were black folk that were not able to get their ID, which is in and of itself absolutely absurd. But there was a whole big push around this. And even in Texas, even in Texas, they just recently passed more stringent voting laws to say that you would have to show your ID in order to vote, which is a very logical practice. Okay, you need a fishing license to go and fish down at Surfside and in Galveston. You need a license to catch fish out of the ocean. You need a license to go and hunt. You need a license to drive. You need a license to do a whole lot of stuff. And what we're simply saying is that when you go to vote, you need to be able to show a license. Now, that was a big racist issue last summer. Now, I want you to think about this in regards to African Americans, because the number one people group that are not being vaccinated in New York are African Americans. The number one people group that are not being vaccinated in New York are African Americans. The number one people group that are not taking the vaccine, that are refusing the vaccine, are African Americans. And so now in New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio said, unless you have a VAC card, you cannot gain interests into these particular businesses. Well, if I go get my vaccination, then I need my ID to get my vaccination. So if voting rights were being inhibited, were being restricted by showing an ID to go and vote, then you turn around 1 year later and say, if I don't show my VAC card, I can't gain interest into these particular businesses. And I know that the number one group in your city that is not receiving the vaccinations were African Americans, then it seems as though African Americans are going to be discriminated from going into restaurants and to bars and into gyms. It seems as though the number one people group that will be affected by the policies of Mayor Bill de Blasio would be those of African descent, African Americans. Because African Americans who are not, first of all, taking the vaccination because they don't trust it, and second of all, don't have the vac card to gain interest into these particular places of business. If that's not discrimination, what is? If that's not discrimination, what is? And as you are looking at this thing right here, this COVID-19 that seemingly will not go away, and all the things that have been done in regards to this whole COVID-19, this COVID-19 thing is ravaging and will not leave for whatever reason. We're supposedly getting doctors who are walking out of hospitals because people won't get vaccinated. Doctors who took the Hippocratic oath to render aid and medical aid to those who are not able to help themselves and to those who found themselves in particular conditions, seemingly walked out of a hospital because people were not receiving the vaccine. I want you to check that news story out. I want you to go behind the scenes because it is a whole bunch of bull. It's a lot going on. Now we have pastors that will not allow parishioners into the house of God unless they show a VAC card or their VAC passport. Disappointment is an understatement. We're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. COVID-19 and all that happened, how it turned the world literally upside down, how there's an absolute new way of life. But when these things begin to start happening inside of the church, they take a whole different meaning. We are supposed to be the salt and the light of the earth. That's the church. But everybody, I think it's time I think it's time that we begin to start to question some things, right? I am not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a grassy knoll kind of guy. Do I believe in conspiracy theories? Yes, because there's a standard of law that can convict you on conspiracy. So conspiracy is not it's not an abject thing that's like it doesn't exist. Of course it exists. But there's not conspiracy under every rock as far as I'm concerned. I do believe that there are people in higher levels of power that are hell-bent on getting as much power as they possibly can. I do believe that. I do believe that control is the ultimate aphrodisiac, even that much more than money. When I can control you and have power over what you do, what you think, what you say, how you interact, then I have the ultimate power over you. So I do believe that there is a chess game going on with those who have and those who have not. And there is a political ping pong ball being thrown back and forth, and we are just the pawns in the middle of the game. I do believe that. However, one of the things that makes America this land of opportunity, this land where people will come and bow down to get into, is because of the freedoms that they enjoy. And those freedoms, which are quickly being turned into mandates, which are quickly being turned into force, which is quickly being used as coercion, those mandates, once they are lost, will be hard to be regained. Let me kind of give you what I'm thinking here. America has now just recently pulled out of Afghanistan after 20 years. 20 years in Afghanistan. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, a day that will ring in infamy to any of us who remember. You remember exactly where you were and exactly what you were doing when you saw those planes hit the north and south towers of the Twin Towers in New York. It's similar to the fact of Pearl Harbor. If you ask anybody who was living during Pearl Harbor, they'll tell you they can remember the exact place. They can remember what they were doing when Pearl Harbor struck. When Japan struck us at Pearl Harbor, it was such a dramatic event that it welded itself into our memory banks. Well, we're coming up on 20 years here in just a couple of weeks. The 20-year anniversary of 9/11, where 3,000 plus Americans died in terrorist attacks. We have recently, as of August the 31st, 2021, we have pulled the last remaining troops, U.S. Military personnel, completely out of Afghanistan, completely out. In doing so, now you guys have been watching the news, you guys have been watching the melee and the chaos that has ensued in Afghanistan, mainly in Kabul, to where the main military base was operating in. This particular place and this particular withdrawal out of Afghanistan has been a melee, to say the least. Just last week, we had 13 of our military servicemen died as a suicide bomber bombed the airport where they were patrolling. 13 U.S. servicemen and women died just about a week ago. And hundreds, approaching thousands, were injured in that suicide bombing. As of August the 31st, we have pulled all remaining military personnel out of Afghanistan. America is no longer in Afghanistan. Now watch this. Militarily, we're no longer in Afghanistan. There's over 500 Americans that have still been left behind in Afghanistan, not including the allies of the Afghans who aided us during the Afghanistan war. Over 50,000 Afghan troops since 2015 lost their lives in trying to protect their homeland from the Taliban. But over 500 Americans have been left behind in Afghanistan. Now we're gone. The last military personnel pulled out on August the 31st, just a couple of days ago. We're gone. There's no military presence nowhere in Afghanistan. We left $85 billion of weaponry in Afghanistan. Black Hawks, Humvees, M16, rocket launchers, ammunition that'll take you into the year 3000. We got tanks, we got military compounds, we got computer equipment. We got $85 million worth of inventory that we left there. We left $85 million worth of weaponry, armed equipment that we simply left in Afghanistan. There have been calls for people to resign, especially the military brass and how they operated this. Now, let me just say this. Let me just go back and put this in here. The withdrawal out of Afghanistan has been on the books for the last 6 years. What people are concerned about, what I am concerned about, is the processes by which we withdrew out of Afghanistan. What does that mean? That means we're already in a terrorist nation, a nation that hates your guts, that hates everything about your way of life, hates everything about your freedoms, hate everything about what you do. They hate everything about you. They are hell-bent on destroying you and your way of life. You have American personnel, you have our allies within Afghanistan that are risking their life day in and day out for the causes that we say that we're in Afghanistan for. The proper thing to have done would be to remove all of the Americans and all of our allies before we pulled out the last of our military troops. That would have been prudent. As I sit in the stead of Studio B, even I know that would have been the most appropriate action to do. That withdrawing, okay, fine. If you want to get out of Afghanistan, fine. Let's get out. We've been there for 20 years. Let's get out. But can we at least do it? Can those who have dedicated their lives to military service, who are the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the generals and all of these people that are in these high levels of position, you mean to tell me that nobody said, hey, before we do that, before we pull out the protection, let's get our people out first. And as we get our people out first, then we pull the military, which is our first and our last line of defense. But that's not what we did. We pulled the military out first and then told those who were stuck in Afghanistan to try to get out, try to make your way to the airport, try to get on the plane so that we can get you out of here. When the support and the protection around those people were taken away. And the people that are hell-bent on destroying them have now been equipped with rocket launchers and AK-47s and M16 and grenades and all of the like. So now the Taliban is actually flying Black Hawks around Afghanistan, our Black Hawks. And we have left people behind. I am not a prophet, nor do I claim to be one. I've never claimed to be a prophet. I'm not going to start on this day. But I promise you, what has happened in Afghanistan is now going to create a vacuum that somebody is going to fill. Somebody's going to fill that. We know that the Taliban was absolutely instrumental in the planning of the 9/11 attacks. We know that it was absolutely instrumental in planning those attacks in Afghanistan. We know that. Like, this is a fact. We know that Afghanistan, the region, played an integral part in planning the attacks on September the 11th. We know that. And now that the military, the most powerful military on the face of the planet, has now withdrawn itself out of the region and has left the Taliban to a governmental system, there's going to be a vacuum that has been created that will be filled by somebody. So the Taliban is going to do a couple things. They're going to enact Sharia law. I am amazed, everybody. I am amazed. If this would have been last year under Trump's presidency, you would have burned the White House down. We would have burned it down. would have burned it down all the way to the grass. That a sitting U.S. president would leave American citizens in a foreign and hostile region after he's pulled out all protection of the U.S. military personnel. An acting U.S. president, you would have crucified him, you'd have burned him down. But it seems as though what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. It seems as though this particular thing, which is going to cause dramatic harm and something that we will now have to deal with for the upcoming years, when we have now talking about negotiating with the Taliban. So now we're going to negotiate with terrorists. We're going to negotiate with people that have sworn to kill us. They have sworn to destroy our way of life. Now we want to sit down at the table of brotherhood and negotiate with them. I'm not a military expert. I'm not in the room when they're doing the debriefings. I'm not in the situation room. So I know that there's information that I am not privy to. I am no expert in this particular region, in this particular arena, by no stretch of the imagination. But I don't even think it takes an expert to understand that we don't leave people behind. I don't think it's a deep and concise issue that we don't leave people behind. There is as we see what's going on in our nation right now, I consider myself to be I consider myself to be more optimistic than I am pessimistic, even though I can be a pessimist at times. I consider myself to be more of an optimist than I am a pessimist. So I typically have the view that it's half full as opposed to half empty, because I believe that people will help us. I believe that people will rise to the occasion. But it's very, very difficult when you are when you're in this what is seemingly a cyclone, in this era of duplicity, in this era of non-consistency, in this era where this is good for this person, but what's good for this person is not also good for this person. It's an age of a double-sided coin where people just flip-flop all the time for the benefit of themselves. As I've been sitting here looking at one of the things like YouTube, and let me just talk for that for a second. One of the things about YouTube that is a benefit to YouTube is that it allows you, in platforms like this, it allows you to get different perspectives from those who may offer different opinions. And I'm not going to go into a tirade about the media and all that other good stuff. However, when the media chooses sides, you get very biased news reports. And if you are a news intaker, the days of Brokaw, the days of Rather, the days of unbiased news journalism, whether it hurts your feelings or not, those days are absolutely gone. No matter what TV show you watch, no matter what news program it may be, it is bent to a particular political bias, right? And if it's bent to a particular political bias, that means they can be bought. That means that the information that is coming across your screen at 10 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, whenever you watch the news, those news stories have been carefully filtered by somebody other than the news anchors. Okay. And so they're giving us information, not necessarily within its full context, but giving us stories that fit their narrative. And when you get news sources that are biased, not non-biased, but biased and extremely biased, then the news becomes jaded. It becomes a jaded news source, and you really can't put a lot of time, energy, and effort into it. When you see, just as Hurricane Ida just hit Louisiana, New Orleans, and all of the cities there be around them, Go and find this clip on the Weather Channel. We have two men that are out there in the storm as Ida is coming through New Orleans, and they are holding themselves back because the winds are so strong. And as they are bracing themselves because the winds are pushing them so hard that they can barely stand still, two patrons just walk right past them casually drinking a beer. Why would they want to portray that this storm was knocking them off of their feet when two people just simply stroll by them? We'll put a link here in the description so that you can look at that video. But why would they need to do that? Because it's to create panic, and panic sells. Panic, fear gets views. And so when you're looking at the stuff that is going on in our nation right now, it's very difficult for me to look at any news source and gain confidence from what they're saying. It's very difficult unless you can do your own independent research and figure out those particular things for yourself. It's very difficult for me to turn on to a major network and hear what they're saying without also hearing the political bias, whatever which way they may lean. And I think it's of grave concern to us that our media news sources, this freedom of press, has been infiltrated at the highest levels. And I think it's something that is greatly concerning because they're spoon feeding us information that keeps us on edge. As we were talking about Afghanistan, I work with an organization called the Voice of the Martyrs. And the Voice of the Martyrs is this Christian organization that works with and supports underground churches and churches that are experiencing deep persecution around the world. Because unlike in America, unlike in developed first world countries, freedom of religion is not free. And so they're not at liberty to express varying religious views if it's not in concert to what the government has mandated. And so this organization called Voice of the Martyrs is a support organization to these underground churches that are experiencing persecution at the highest levels. And I mean persecution to the point of death and imprisonment. Afghanistan has the second largest underground church in the world, only that to China. Afghanistan has the second largest underground church in the world. And my fear, and it is a great fear because it has already been happening. It was happening with the U.S. military there, with the British government there, with all of our allies in Afghanistan. It was still happening. And if it was happening with the military forces in country at that time, how much more is it going to happen with them being withdrawn? Christians in Afghanistan are being persecuted to the hilt. And this makes it a very difficult thing for us to understand here in America because we have this thing called freedom of religion. We have it is a right. It is a God-given right for you to practice whatever religion that you want to practice. Whatever you say is your religion, you have the right and the benefit to do that. Okay. And that's even if it's contrary to the popular opinion, even if it's Satanism, even if it's whatever ism, you get the freedom in America to practice that as long as it does not cause hurt or harm to other individuals. That's a freedom of religion. And I think that freedom of religion is so trampled on that it's not taken to its core that we oftentimes forget how precious that freedom is and that other people around the world do not enjoy that same freedom. They do not enjoy that same freedom in China. China has a mandate. And Christianity, especially in China, is met with stiff resistance, imprisonment, and even death. And not just imprisonment for the person that has been found to be practicing Christianity within the confines of China, but also to their relatives and to their loved ones. So if I was caught practicing and preaching Christianity in China, then my wife and my kids are also subject to imprisonment because of what I was doing. This is happening right now, 2021 in China. We don't hear a word about it. But in Afghanistan, which is the second largest underground church in the world, These Christians in Afghanistan, which are spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, are being found out, are being sold out. There is a list that was given to the Taliban. There was a list that was given to the Taliban almost about 2 weeks ago. And this list had allies, had U.S. allies, and their names on this particular list that was given to the Taliban. They was given a list with the names of those who had cooperated with the United States of America in the last 20 plus years of them occupying the region of Afghanistan. They were given a list. You have Christians in Afghanistan right now, and in the near future, just mark my words. Again, not a prophet, nor do I claim to be one, but I promise you, the human crisis, the human toll, the assaults against women, the rapes, the things that the Taliban does on a normative basis will increase exponentially over these next months and years of us not being in that region. I promise you this. The Christian underground church, even right now, is being hunted out to those who oppose Sharia law and oppose the things of Islam. And I'm not in Islam, and I'm talking about a very specified portion of Islam. Those Christians who stand against that and those Christians who are proclaiming Christ to be the Lord are being hunted and a lot of times executed. There's a video that I wish I could put in here, but the scenes are just far too graphic of people that 11 Christian men that were found out to be Christians that were executed in the public square. This is happening right now in the regions of Afghanistan. There's a lot going on in our nation right now. So, how do we respond? How do we respond? It's difficult. Now, I am not a gloomer and doomer, but I do believe that at some point in time, we're going to stop talking about being in the last days and we're actually going to be in the last days. I believe that with everything that is going on in the world today, that these are the beginning of birth pains. I believe a test is coming. I believe that difficult times are ahead. I do not believe that it's going to be a kumbaya moment where we can skip down the yellow brick road hand in hand. I do believe that difficult times are coming. I do believe that America is in for experiencing those birth pains. I believe things are going to get tight. As you look at what's going on, when I tell you that when America sneezes, everybody else catches a cold, make no mistake about it, America is still a superpower by which other nations draw strength from. So what goes on in America reverberates around the entire world. Make no mistake about that. So what do we do in a time where it seems like there's no stability? It just gets worse and worse and worse. Well, the answer that I would give you, of course, would be, of course, to keep a spirit of prayer, because I do believe that we need to be vigilant in our prayer life. But I would also say, on top of being vigilant in our prayer life, we need to be mindful. We need to be mindful. And watch this. Here's the courageous thing. Speak up. Speak up. Speaking up is very difficult to do, y'all. It's because we live in a world that does not reward those who speak out against a certain thing. We live in a world where we have to enact whistleblower laws, where if there's going to be a whistleblower, we're going to protect that person because we know that by them sounding the alarm that they're going to be placed in harm's way. So we live in a world right now that does not reward those who tell truth. We live in a world right now to where we reward openly lies and propaganda. And it's done at the highest levels, and it trickles all the way down to Main Street. So what do we do? What's the point? I would say this: our nation continues to reel. Our nation seems as though it's very difficult for us to get our footing on the right path. But what can help us is what this nation offers. And that is these individual freedoms that should be absolutely cherished. It should be absolutely cherished. We're going to have challenges. We're going to have problems. We're going to have all of these things. However, it is not to the place to where life is going to end as we know it. Is it going to be challenging? Yes. And as I told you many times before, when you put your hope in man, disappointment would follow. Because the only hope is that of what the Lord offers us. So we still got COVID-19. We got Afghanistan. We got all of these things that are happening right now. There's a young man. I want to real quickly. I want to read something to you. This is from the Washington Post. It said the White House responded Tuesday to a plea from an Afghan interpreter who helped rescue then Senator Joe Biden and two other senators in a 2008 snowstorm, reiterating the president's pledge to use democracy to work to evacuate remaining allies who were still left in Afghanistan. This interpreter in 2008 was instrumental in helping President Biden, then Senator Biden, and John Kerry get out of a snow-laden Afghanistan valley and help them to get to safety where they were later airlifted out of Afghanistan. This interpreter that helped President Biden, then Senator Biden, and John Kerry was left behind in Afghanistan. The person that helped President Biden was left behind in Afghanistan. And here's what he said: I am begging you guys to come and help me and my family, as I know that I will die sooner rather than later without your help. This is the guy that helped Senator Biden at the time, John Kerry at the time, to get airlifted to safety out of Afghanistan. This person was left behind in Afghanistan and is now asking that they would come back and get him. Yeah. It's a lot. So, everybody, what do we do? I think what we can do is the only thing we can do. That's to stay faithful, stay encouraged, stay focused. Keep your head up. Don't get fed up. Fight the good fight of faith. Fight the good fight of faith. Everybody, I want to thank you so very much for joining us here on the set of Studio B. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to everything going on here at the set of Studio B. Remember, right here in the description box, there is a Patreon link. If you want to support Studio B financially, you can go there, click on that, and become a supporter to our Patreon. And by being a supporter to Patreon, you will get podcasts that will be delivered to you before the airing, and even special podcasts on upcoming and current events around our nation and around our world. But everybody, thank you so very much for joining us here on the set of Studio B. We'll see you next week.